to another live. I went to a stationery meetup and did an ink swap with a pen friend. And so I have 7 new ink samples to swatch that I got to pick from my pen friend's collection or assortment. So I'm excited to try these. Several are some that I've been wanting to check out, and then some just looked like a color that I would really enjoy. So I'm going to use my Wearing swatch cards today. I recently did a video on the new Colorverse swatch cards that came out. And I really like them a lot. But my collection, ink swatch collection book is in Wearing, so I'm going to do the Wearing cards. And as I mentioned, I have 7 inks. So let's go ahead and get started. First up, I have Ferris Wheel Press Treasured Manuscript. And this is probably the one that I am most curious about, because the swatch that I saw of it was, I couldn't tell if it was going to be like a brownish, yellowish green or what. So I'll put some ink down and then get swatching here. There we go. Already I'm finding that this is a lot lighter than I anticipated, and I'm not really seeing brown. So I'm curious to see how this will dry. I'm using my Colorverse shuttle in the aluminium to do my writing. So this is Ferris Wheel Press Treasured Manuscript. There we go. Alright, we'll see how that dries. I'm curious. I'm also switching over, at least for this round, from using my watercolor calligraphy brush to using my glass spoon exclusively. I really like using the glass spoon. I usually use a brush for these swatches, but I'm curious to try it out. So we'll see how it goes. Next, we have Robert Oster Day to Night. And this is a darker ink. Starting out just by putting some ink on the page. Then I'll turn my spoon around. Ooh. Wow. I love this. That is gorgeous. Okay, I'm really curious to see this dry, but I think this already is a contender for a favorite purple. Robert. Wow, that's pretty. That is so gorgeous. I can't wait to show and see this dry, but already, whew, lovely, lovely, lovely. Okay, here is an ink I've been very curious about. This is the Collab Ink Esterbrook Coffee Monster Co. Forgotten Iced Coffee. And we've seen this all over the place. So I'm really excited and curious to see how this plays. I'm already seeing like a greenish undertone. Very gray and green so far. And of course, like anything else, it will vary greatly depending on your paper. So, um, Coffee Monster Co. Esterbrook. Forgotten iced coffee. So as it's drying, it's looking like it's leaning grayer. So again, super curious to see this when it's dry. We'll look at everything dry. But it's definitely a very unique color. Next up, Sailor Manyo Azuki. Now this one I saw a swatch with the color and I knew that I wanted to try it. And it was a bottle of ink that came with my pen friend's Sailor Pro Gear Slim. Oh, that is lovely. So one thing I really like about using a brush and a like watercolor brush or this glass spoon is it's very effortless, it's easy cleanup, and you get a unique swatch every time, which is kind of fun. So this is the Sailor Manyo Azuki. So it's a very dusty purplish pink. All right, we're 4 in. Next is Robert Ooster Coffee Monster. So this will be a very interesting comparison to the Coffee Monster Co. and Esterbrook collab, the Forgotten Iced Coffee. I already know that this one leans way more brown than the other, which leans more grayish green. This also feels it's more saturated and it feels a little bit less wet, I would say. Robert Ooster Coffee Monster. And I guess I should say this is a collab with Coffee Monster Co. There we go. There's a little bit of a greenish undertone to that, just very slight. So it gives a little bit of a cool impression, but it's actually quite neutral. Wrangle Don Quixote. Very interesting. Okay, let's see. Don Quixote. I like this paper, this Ringgold paper, swatch card paper also, because it gives you a nice amount of time to move the ink. Some inks, or some papers rather, that are too absorbent, um, like leave a mark of where you put the ink down at. Hi, Bailey. Thanks for joining. Yeah, I've been wondering about this one for quite some time too. So, you and I both. And we'll see how it dries. I've been doing quite a bit of Wearingal and Colorverse inks lately. So, I'd be curious to know what everyone's favorites are. If you want to share and leave them in the comments, that'd be cool. I already want to compare this to some inks that I'm drying. I really want to compare this to some inks lately that I've been exploring, that are brownish pinks, because that's definitely what this looks like. So, Sweet Treat and Common Reed, I want to compare this to. All right, Bailey, you're saying Wearingal Hades is a favorite. I'll have to look that up because I don't know what that is off the top of my head. This leans a little more pink than it's showing on camera, but again, when it's dry, we'll have a really good look at it. Okay, we're on to the next. Ferris Wheel Press Workshop Wishes. This is a shimmer ink, so I saved it for last. Let me put the lid on and shake it, actually. Give it a jostle before we swatch it. I'm mostly curious. I don't particularly care for shimmer inks, but I was more curious about what the shade of brown this is. It looks pretty light when I've seen photography on it, but we'll see. The thing is with light inks, they're really fun to like see in swatches, but they're often not very ideal for like practical for actually using with fountain pens. And at least in my ink wanderings, Ferris Wheel Press is kind of one of those brands that is renowned in my mind for that, where they come up with some really good colors, shades, interesting properties, but often they'll just make it a little too light with a lot of their shades that becomes rather impractical, at least for me, in use, because I tend to use fine and extra fines quite a lot. So if you get a really light ink, that can be problematic with legibility. Okay, I'm looking at my swatches. I want to try the Sailor Manyo Azuki again. Because this one turned out kind of muddy, And I haven't figured out yet on this wearing wallpaper if that is a paper problem or an ink problem. Like if the ink is an oversaturated one that doesn't behave well. So I'm going to try to ease back on the ink while I swatch this one and see if it makes any difference at all in the performance so that I can get a better read on this ink on this paper. Let's try that. I've had that happen a couple times, and I don't know if it's I've oversaturated it. It kind of looks like it, and I'm always referring to that in my swatching, trying to remind everyone not to oversaturate swatches because you don't get a true read on the ink of the ink's properties and the performance. So I think this is one where I missed the mark and I oversaturated my swatch. Okay, thanks, Bailey. Yeah, it is a murky or dusty pinkish purple. And it looks like the swatch that I redid is doing a lot better. So, you know, I do need to be careful not to oversaturate when I swatch because then you get a misread on the inks and their performance. Because this just, you can see on the paper, it's just too muddy. It's not crisp. This looks much, much better. Okay, now let's start circling around and taking a look at the ones that have dried. So here is Robert Oster, Day to Night. And I would say, so in general, the camera, it's picking up a little bit flatter and less vibrant and bright than in person. And I don't really know that changing my temperature would help that at all. Let's see. Not really. So I think, you know, you just need the most natural light possible in order to get the best read. But we're doing the best we can. It's a pretty good representation, other than the fact that I'd say it's quite a bit more vibrant in person. But it's lovely. I would say I would love this shade of purple. Ferris Wheel Press Treasured Manuscript. I didn't see this coming. I really thought that this would be a lot more brown, and it's definitely a yellowish, greenish, slight brown. Almost like the hue that a old document paper itself would get, and not so much like a sepia that you would see for old documents of the color of the ink. So that's too bad. I like the idea, but I think they needed a little bit more brown, personally, for this to be a more approachable, usable, appreciated ink. Okay, let's take a look at the Coffee Monster Co. and Esterbrook Forgotten Iced Coffee. I like this. I will say I like this more now that I've swatched it myself than what I've seen varied photos of. I'm curious to try this on Tomoe River, and I think that I will here on this video, on this live. But this is another one that's really tricky. It would be curious to let my iced coffee go, or a portion of it, just to see if it ends up looking like this. But again, I think this is missing just a little bit more interest, and just a little bit more saturation would be really nice for usability, I would say. Then we re-swatched the Sailor Manyo Azuki. That looks much better than my first swatch. But even here in those saturated areas, it's not playing very well with the paper. And I don't really know if that's like a paper problem or if that's like the ink is too wet. I was pretty light on this application. Is it, Bailey, is it the Coffee Monster Co. Forgotten Iced Coffee that is too light for you? Okay, so Azuki is a drier ink. Okay, I don't know. So I really don't know why it's behaving like that. Yeah, really weird. It happens on occasion with some of my ink swatches, and I'm gonna have to figure that out. Okay, then we have the Coffee Monster Co. and Robert Oster collab. This is Coffee Monster. Now, if I was to pick between these two, um, I definitely think this is a much more usable color. I also don't think it's available anymore. But same thing, I'd like to see just a little bit more interest in the color. It's a very nice medium brown. It's not too light, it's not too dark. It's pretty medium on its like neutral as far as brown go. Leaning, I thought I saw a little bit of a green undertone when I swatched it. I wonder if I should get back into chromatography again, because that would really show the underlining colors. But anyway, it'd be nice to see just a little more complexity to these inks. That would make it a lot more intriguing for me. Kind of, I'd say so far the most interesting one is the Day to Night. That's, it's just more, I would like to see a crisper shading on this ink though. Ooh, mix them. Okay, Bailey, we're gonna do that. When I'm done doing some swatching here and looking over the dry ones, I'm gonna mix them together and aim for equal parts. And that's a good idea. Let's just see what they look for. Like, one's Esterbrook, one's Robert Oster. I generally like to mix within brands, but I'm not like putting it in a fountain pen. It's just for curiosity's sake. So I think I'm on board for that. Let's see. Okay, Wrangel Don Quixote. Yeah, it's kind of, again, the lighting isn't the ideal, but it's a little bit more pink in person and more brown than gray, I would say. It's very lovely. It looks like it is fair shading, not super great. But I'm going to compare this to Sweet Treat and Common Reed and take a look at this one. That's another thing that I really like. I like to see crisper shading on the inks. I'll show you in my swatch book what I mean by that. Okay, then the Ferris wheel press. See, this is way more interesting to me. I mean, even if you take away, even if we swatched this without the shimmer, this is a very entertaining ink to look at. It has a unique undertone. The shading's much darker and then much lighter. I just think there's more complexity, there's more interest. I'm trying to decide, like, if I do think if this was just a smidge darker, the usability would go way more up. But I like the balance. It's a really nice balance between yellow and brown. It's not too murky brown, and it's not too vibrant either. So I think as far as shades go, this is really good. I think usability would be even better if it was slightly darker, at least for me, using fine and extra fine nibs. If you're using a broad or a wet writer, I think this would be no problem. And again, I don't do shimmer in my fountain pen, so I'd skim the top, drop the shimmer on that. But I think the shimmer adds a lot of fun and interest, and I like that they went with silver. Something about the combination with the silver and the brown is very nice. Okay, so let's do some. First of all, let's do that little experiment of mixing these two, and let's do it on Tomoe River paper. I'll swatch each ink on its own first, and then we can take a look. And I want to compare some ink colors too with some of the other swatches we did. Okay, so here's my Galen Leather Tomoe River passport-sized notebook. And we're going to start with just doing a little swatch of the Forgotten Iced Coffee. Como ça? And then the Coffee Monster. And then let's mix them. I'm trying to think. You know, I have just this little plastic cap. I think I'll use this. And I'll use my syringe to put a drop of each. Actually, I think an eyedropper would be more exact. Let me do that instead. Let me get my little mini eyedropper. Oh, yikes. I can't even find it. Okay. This won't be scientifically correct, but we'll just go for it. Let me do one dip. There we go. I think because the lighter color is so much lighter, we're going to want to mix a smaller portion. So I'm going to try this again. A dip of this. And a smaller amount. This one. There we go. Yeah, because the other color kind of takes over. That cool undertone on this one came through a bunch. And it makes the brown kind of green, which I think is, if we're talking about coffee, is kind of unappetizing. So it would be more legible, I agree. We'll see how it dries. We will see how it dries. Okay, what was the one I wanted to try on Tomoe River? Was it... Oh, Don Quixote. Oh, you think that looks more like a sweet cappuccino? Yeah, it's the cool undertones are mellowing out now that it's drying. So I'm hopeful that when it's dry it won't look so cool. But on Tomoe River paper, look at how cool the Forgotten Iced Coffee. I mean, it's like literally so far looking like a gray with a green undertone. This hasn't, now that this is drying, it's actually not bad. I just don't feel it's like distinctive enough from the original one. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, I'm gonna swatch the Don Quixote, but while that's drying, let's compare the Don Quixote to some of the other cards. You know, I don't think I have Common Read on Wrangle, but we'll look at it on the Colorverse paper. Right here. And then let me find Sweet Treat. Oh, no, I did do it. Oh, sweet. Okay, cool. That way we're comparing apples to apples all on the same paper. Put that in the corner here. Okay, so here's Don Quixote. Here's Common Read by Colorverse. And, okay, we do have to move it over. Here is Ink Mazaru, I think. I don't know really how that's pronounced, but Sweet Treat. Okay, so here's the thing. Sweet Treat is a dusty pink with a slight brown undertone. That's how it reads on this paper, at least to my eye. Common Read is definitely leaning more of a brown with a pink undertone. Still very dusty. And then Wrangle Don Quixote is more of, in comparison to these especially, is more of a brownish gray with a pinkish purple undertone. And I'm trying to decide, at least to me, which one I prefer. I think because Sweet Treat is quite a bit lighter, yet legible, I think they hit the mark on how light this should be quite well, I would say. Of course, if you are using an extra fine, probably too light, but that allows for some nice shading. They all shade quite nicely. I feel like I like that the Don Quixote is a little more purplish, and we don't really see very many brownish purples often. I was just watching Julia here's currently inked for August, and it was the giant octopus, Pacific giant octopus, I think, and that was a darker brownish purple, and I thought that was really cool. So that's a comparison. Yeah, the Sweet Treat, I like that too, Bailey. So those are pretty unique. I like that a lot. This is almost dry now. So we did, here is the Coffee Monster Co. Forgotten Iced Coffee, Coffee Monster Co. Coffee Monster. About equal parts mixed. And then this is more Forgotten Iced Coffee with just a little bit of the Coffee Monster. Now that it's drying, it doesn't look as cool. It's definitely a cool brown. Like, there's no mistaking that. But it's not as green looking as when it was wet. When it was wet, it looked rather unappetizing. And now, to me, this is what I think of when I think of a iced coffee that has gotten watered down and forgotten about, because it still has those very present brown undertones, but it has like that very diluted look, like what you get when you have a lot of ice that has mixed with your coffee for a long time, and sometimes it separates. At least on Tomoe River paper, this is even more gray, I think, than it looked on the Wrangle paper for the swatch card. I wonder if it's MD paper where it comes up looking more brown. I have some MD paper, maybe we should try it. But Yeah. What do you think, Bailey? How do you like this version of the Forgotten Iced Coffee mix? Okay, I want to take a look at some of these purples. Yeah, it does look more legible for sure. Still might be kind of light. But let's take a look at some of these purples. Yeah, I think the original version looked too diluted also. And like too gray, not enough brown. I want to see how this purple Day to Night Robert Ooster fits in. I really like that this is such a nice balance between purple and pink. It's really pretty. Here's next to Tiramisu Innocent Mauve, which has been a favorite with me lately. Here's the Robert Oster Sydney Lavender, Lennon Toolbar Purple Rice, uh, J. Herbon. I'm just gonna say Delune because Poussière. I'm not sure. Robert Oster Burgundy Chocolate Notes, which is quite pink. It looks more purple on camera. So I really like that. Now that this is dry, I want to try the. I want to try. Don Quixote. On the Tomo River paper. Wrangle. Wrangle. Dawn. Quixote. There you go. Alright. Oh, it looks really pretty as it dries. I really like that. And I want to try, once this is dry, I want to try the Ferris Wheel Press Workshop Wishes Sans Shimmer. And see how expressive that is. So some really fun inks. I love the inspiration from this. I just wish the color was more on point. This is the Ferris Wheel Press Workshop Wishes. I love that that undertone is so good. I like that a lot. Yeah. And, the Tomo River paper does show the ink properties really nicely. But the thing is, I like it to see the ink tones and all that. But realistically, I'm just not using Tomoe River paper for writing. I don't like the see-through for when I do pages. So for my planner, I use Midori MD. And then for my normal writing, at least currently, I'm using the Kokoyo Campus. So, it's fun to see what the ink can do, the performance, the undertones, the properties on Tomoe River, but realistically, it's not going to look like that. Yeah, I think it would look really nice on here. And I have Endure paper, so we can try that. I actually have gotten one of these pads. It's like a little square pad of Endure paper. It came with 500 sheets, so it's really good for these purposes. So let's go ahead and swatch it. What was the other one I was curious about how it looked on Midori? Maybe it was the Forgotten Iced Coffee. Okay, Day to Night, sure. It's a combination of the paper's performance, but also, since it's cream, I think that shifts the look of the ink a bit, too. And depending on the situation, it might be a good shift. Day to Night. And there's room for one more, so let me do the workshop. Ooh, Day to Night's so fun. Oops. Whoa, okay. Day to Night. And then a workshop, which is all right. Let those dry. Oh no! Sorry, Don Quixote. Okay, I think the Tomoe River one is dry. Let's take a look. Everything's more fun on Tomoe River. You get a lot more crisp shading and just more clean ink. It doesn't look so muddy. It looks a little more pinkish gray than brown on the Tomoe River paper. And let's see how our MD paper is shaping up. So let's see, Don Quixote. There we go. It looks more pink on the MD. Not really much gray going on there, and kind of a pinkish brown. And the day tonight, let's see. There's day tonight. I love that blue shading on this ink. I'm waiting for Workshop Wishes and Forgotten Iced Coffee to dry. So I don't know which paper I've seen. Yeah, it is lighter. It's interesting. I don't know which Forgotten Iced Coffee I've seen on Instagram of people swatching where it looks like more brown. But we have to remember there's a combination of things going on. There's the paper, there's how saturated someone's doing their swatch, and the photography and the lighting. So there's a lot of aspects going on here. Yeah, I saw someone swatch it that looks like a nice brown, and I was like, okay, it is possible. I don't think it looks any more brown on the Midori. It's quite dry now. It looks actually pretty identical. You can go back a page. Go back a page and look at it on the Tomoe River. It looks way more gray, I think, on Tomoe River paper. And lighter. Alright, let me blot the Don Quixote so that I can turn the page. It was almost done drying. Okay, Workshop Wishes. This is the one I wanted to see. And I think what I'm going to do... Where is it? Workshop Wishes. There it is. Okay. So I'm going to swatch it now without the shimmer, because realistically, this is how I would be using it myself in a fountain pen. But I use shimmer all the time with my dip pens. So it really just depends what the situation is. And even when I ink my fountain pens, I usually only do a mil or a half mil depending. So a short fill, not a full fill, because I like to switch up my inks a lot. Workshop Wishes. All right, cool. So I'd say, I think the most interesting color to me, actually, that's kind of hard. I'd say let's do top three. I liked the Ferris Wheel Press, Workshop Wishes, Don Quixote by Wearingal, and Robert Oster Day Tonight. The ones that I'd be least impressed with would be the Ferris Wheel Press Treasured Manuscript. Love the inspiration of this color, but they just didn't get the color down. It's too light, and I would have liked it for it to be a little bit more brown, a little more saturated, like more legible. And Forgotten Iced Coffee. Love the inspiration. I just don't feel like the color was on point. But I really like Bailey's idea of mixing these two inks and going heavier on the Forgotten Iced Coffee and just a little smidge of this to encourage that brown depth and undertone that it's missing on its own to celebrate that inspiration. I really liked the Sailor Maya Azuki. The performance has been questionable, and I'm, it's hesitant to know like what's going on with that. If you can't really test the performance very well just by doing a swatch, although you get an impression from it on how it flows off your nib and so on. So here is the Workshop Wishes without shimmer on Tomoe River paper. And it's not 100% dry, but it's almost dry. I really like it. I think this would work okay on a fine writer. Like that really fine line that I got there from the shuttle is legible. So I like that. I like it. I think I like it better in this case on the MD because I think it emphasized that warmer undertone. And it looks just a little bit washed out on the Tomoe River. So, yeah. Okay, thank you for joining for this ink swatching experience. I always enjoy getting new inks and swatching them and exploring these inks and on different papers too. So let me know which ones you were excited to see in the comments, and also, as I mentioned before, if you have favorite Wearingal or Colorverse inks, I'd be especially interested in hearing them because I've been using and exploring those inks quite a lot lately. So I'd be curious for your favorite recommendations. I'll thank you so much for joining, and I hope you have a good time with your inks. It's all up to you now. See you on the next one.